They left me in the snow like I was nothing. I can still hear the car door slam. The engine running. My brother refusing to look at me. My mother's voice saying, "You'll figure it out." And then the car pulling away, tires spinning against the ice, disappearing into the white blur. It was Christmas Eve. We were driving back from a family gathering at my uncle's cabin. It had been tense all night. My brother had accused me of ruining the mood, because I finally confronted him about the money he borrowed and never returned. My parents, as always, took his side. I was the dramatic one, the grateful one. When the argument got louder in the car, my father stopped on a quiet mountain road. Snow falling hard, no houses nearby, no signal. "Get out," he said. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. They said I needed to cool off, that I was ruining everyone's peace. I stood there in my thin jacket, watching my own family drive away. I remember thinking, they'll come back in 5 minutes. They didn't. The cold started biting through my clothes fast. My fingers went numb. My phone had 12% battery and no signal. I started walking, not even knowing which direction led to town. That's when I saw her, an older woman struggling with her car on the side of the road. Hood up. Hazard lights blinking weakly through the storm. She looked as lost as I felt. For a second, I hesitated. I was freezing angry. Abandoned. But I couldn't just walk past her. I went over and asked if she needed help. Her name was Eleanor. She had slid off the road trying to avoid a deer. She was alone, scared, and her phone was dead. Somehow, helping her gave me purpose. I pushed snow away from her tires. Used my last bit of phone battery to try calling roadside assistance. Nothing worked. So we did the only thing we could. We stayed in her car with the heater on low to save gas and waited. She kept thanking me. I kept saying it was nothing. After almost an hour, headlights appeared through the storm. A truck pulled up. It wasn't roadside assistance. It was someone she knew. Apparently, before leaving her house, she had called her neighbor to expect her by a certain time. When she didn't arrive, he came looking. They got her car out. And before she left, she grabbed my hand and said, "I won't forget this." I didn't think much of it. Her neighbor drove me down to the nearest gas station. I called a friend to pick me up. I didn't tell anyone what really happened. Not even my closest friends. I was too ashamed. My family acted like nothing happened. They told relatives I stormed off and refused to get back in the car. They painted me as unstable, difficult. And for months, I stayed quiet. But something inside me shifted that night. I stopped arguing. Stopped defending myself. I moved out quietly, took a second job, saved money, focused only on building my own life. Then one afternoon, about 6 months later, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Eleanor. She somehow tracked down my number through the gas station's security office and her neighbor. She had been looking for me. I almost didn't recognize her voice. She asked to meet. When we sat down at a small cafe, she looked at me like I was family. She told me she had been thinking about that night constantly. How I stayed with her when I had no reason to. How I was shaking from the cold, but kept telling her she would be okay. Then she said something that made my heart stop. She owned the company my father worked for. Not just worked for. She was the majority shareholder. It was a regional logistics company. My father had been a mid-level manager there for over 15 years. He always bragged about how secure his job was. How the owners trusted him. Eleanor told me she rarely involved herself in day-to-day matters. But after that night, she asked her assistant to look into me. That's when she saw my last name. She made the connection. She didn't sound angry. She sounded disappointed. She asked me one simple question. Is it true? I didn't want revenge. Not like that. But I also wasn't going to lie. I told her everything, the car, the snow, the silence. She didn't say much, just nodded slowly. I see, she said. A week later, my father called me for the first time in months. He wasn't angry. He sounded terrified. Apparently, an internal audit had been launched. Management decisions were being reviewed. Performance reports re-examined. There were complaints about favoritism, about ignored HR issues, about misused department budgets. My father wasn't fired immediately, but he was demoted, publicly, transferred to a smaller branch under strict supervision. His bonus revoked. His secure position suddenly very fragile. My brother, who worked under him through connections, lost his job entirely when the nepotism policies were enforced. No drama, no screaming, no explosive confrontation, just consequences. My mother tried calling me, crying about how the family was falling apart. For the first time in my life, I didn't rush to fix it. I simply said, "You told me I'd figure it out." And I had. Months later, Eleanor invited me to join a community outreach program her company sponsored. It paid well. It gave me experience. It gave me dignity. I earned my place there. No shortcuts. No pity. The same family who once left me freezing on a mountain road now watched from a distance as I built something real. I never screamed at them. Never exposed them publicly. Never begged for apologies. The snow that night felt like the end of my life, but it was the beginning of theirs unraveling. And the most satisfying part. I didn't have to destroy them. I just helped the right person. And she made one a long time. I thought that one call was the end of it. It wasn't. After my father's demotion, the house changed. I know because my cousin told me. The loud confidence he used to carry around like a trophy was gone. He stopped boasting at family gatherings. Stopped giving life advice. He barely spoke. My brother tried blaming me at first. Told everyone I must have lied to Eleanor. That I exaggerated. That I was trying to destroy the family. But here's the thing. I never asked her to do anything. I didn't demand revenge. I didn't beg for justice. I just told the truth. And truth has a quiet way of spreading. The internal review uncovered things that had nothing to do with me. Inflated expense reports. Hiring friends without proper interviews. Ignoring complaints from junior staff. Things my father assumed would always stay buried, because he thought he was untouchable. He had built his security on favoritism. And that night in the snow, that was just a reflection of how he treated people, disposable when inconvenient. Meanwhile, my life was finally steady. Working with Eleanor's outreach program gave me confidence I didn't know I had. I coordinated food drives, helped struggling families with winter supplies. Ironically, I was organizing coat donations during snow season. Every time I handed someone a thick jacket, I remembered standing alone on that road. Freezing. Unwanted. But I never told anyone that story. Not even Eleanor brought it up again. She never used it as leverage. She never made me feel like I owed her. She simply treated me with respect. That alone healed something in me. About a year after everything happened, the company held its annual regional meeting. Big event. Managers from every branch attending. I was there, not as someone's son, not as someone's little brother, but as part of the outreach team presenting our annual impact report. I walked into that conference hall wearing a suit I bought with my own money, and that's when I saw him, my father, sitting 3 rows back. Not at the front anymore, not at the head table, 3 rows back. He saw me too. For a second, I expected anger. Maybe resentment. Instead, I saw something else. Regret. When it was my turn to speak, my hands didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. I talked about community responsibility. About leadership meaning accountability. About how the smallest acts, even on the worst nights, can change everything. I didn't look at him while saying it, but I knew he was listening. After the event ended, he approached me. Slow steps. Shoulders slightly lowered. I didn't know. He said quietly. Didn't know what? That it was that cold. That it was that dangerous. Or that actions have consequences. I let the silence sit between us. The same kind of silence he left me in on that mountain road. You left me, I said calmly, not yelling, not emotional, just factual. He nodded. His eyes looked older than I remembered. I thought you'd come back to the car. I almost laughed. I thought you would too. That hit him harder than if I had screamed. He tried to apologize. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. Just awkward and heavy. For the first time in my life, I didn't crave his approval. And that's when I realized the real revenge had already happened. It wasn't his demotion. It wasn't my brother losing his job. It wasn't the whispers in the family. It was this. I no longer needed them. The power dynamic had shifted quietly. They used to believe I'd always come running back, always tolerate the blame, always beg to belong. But abandonment changes you, especially when you survive it. Over the next few months, my family tried to rebuild bridges. Invitations, messages, careful conversations. I kept boundaries, polite, distant, calm. I didn't cut them off completely. I just stopped chasing love that came with conditions. And slowly, something unexpected happened. They started respecting me. Not because I demanded it, but because they realized I could walk away. The snow that night could have ended me. Instead, it exposed them. And the woman I helped, she never bragged about what she did. Never told anyone it was because of me. She once said something that stayed with me. Character reveals itself in storms. My family's did. So did mine. They left me believing I was the problem, the difficult one, the unstable one. But the truth, I was the only one willing to stand in the cold and still choose to help someone else. That one decision changed the direction of my life. Not because I planned revenge, but because patience is sharper than anger, and dignity is louder than shouting. They abandoned me in the snow thinking I would break. Instead, I built a life so solid that when they finally looked back, I wasn't the one standing in the cold winters later. It snowed again. Not the soft, pretty kind, the heavy, suffocating kind that swallows roads and reminds you how small you really are. I was standing in my own apartment, looking out the window, warm, safe, stable. And for the first time, snow didn't make my chest tighten. That night on the mountain road used to replay in my head like a punishment. Now it felt like a turning point. My father's situation never fully recovered. He kept his job, but the respect he once commanded was gone. Promotions stopped. Decisions were double-checked. The authority he used carelessly became supervised. My brother bounced between short-term jobs. Connections didn't work anymore. Policies were stricter now. Merit mattered. Funny how systems only become unfair when they stop favoring you. But here's what made everything even more satisfying. I never gloated. Not once. At family gatherings, I stayed calm, polite, measured. When distant relatives hinted that I was lucky to get my role in the outreach program, I simply explained my responsibilities in detail. Budgets I managed, teams I coordinated, targets we hit. Facts are powerful when you've done the work. Eleanor slowly became more than just someone I respected. She became a mentor. She asked about my goals, encouraged me to take leadership courses, even challenged me when I doubted myself. One afternoon, she told me she was planning to restructure part of the company's community division into a standalone foundation. "And I want you to lead it," she said. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Lead it? Me, the same person who was once told to get out and figure it out alone. I didn't accept immediately. I asked for time, not because I doubted her, but because I wanted to be sure I earned it. I reviewed proposals, built a 3-year plan, created measurable goals. When I presented it to the board, I didn't think about my father sitting in the room. I thought about the snow, about that freezing silence, about choosing to help someone anyway. The board approved it unanimously. When the announcement was made internally, my phone exploded with messages. Congratulations. Pride, excitement. My mother called that evening. Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "We're proud of you," she said. It was strange hearing that without a condition attached. I thanked her. Nothing more. Nothing less. A week later, my father asked if we could meet alone. We sat in a quiet tea shop. No family tension. He looked tired, not defeated, just aware. "I was wrong," he said plainly. About a lot of things. He didn't blame stress. Didn't blame the weather. Didn't blame me. He owned it. And somehow, that mattered more than any demotion. "I treated you like you would always stay," he continued. "No matter what we did?" That was the real betrayal. Not the snow. The assumption. The belief that I would tolerate anything just to belong. "I won't ever forget that night," I told him. "But I'm not angry anymore." And I wasn't, because anger means you're still stuck there. I wasn't stuck anymore. The foundation launched that spring. We expanded winter relief programs across multiple counties. Thousands of families received emergency kits, food boxes, heating support. And every single winter drive, I personally approved the purchase of extra thermal blankets. No one knew why I insisted on that specific brand. I did. The first anniversary of the foundation's launch, we held an appreciation dinner. Staff, volunteers, donors, everyone gathered in one hall. Eleanor gave a short speech. Then she did something unexpected. She told the story of the snowstorm, not naming my family, not exposing details. Just the story of a young man who had every reason to walk away, but chose to help a stranded woman instead. She ended it with one sentence. "Leadership is revealed when no one is watching." The room stood and applauded. I didn't look at my father, but I knew he was there. After the event, as people congratulated me, I stepped outside for air. Snowflakes drifted down slowly, almost peacefully. My brother came out a few minutes later. "I used to think you were weak," he admitted quietly. I didn't respond. He continued, "Turns out you were just patient." That was the closest thing to respect I'd ever heard from him. And that's when it fully settled inside me. The revenge was never about ruining them. It was about outgrowing them. They left me in the snow thinking I would come crawling back. Instead, I built warmth they couldn't ignore. They expected me to beg for a seat at their table. Now they attend events where I lead the room. They once drove away believing I was alone. But the woman I helped made one call. And that call didn't just change their careers. It changed the way they saw me. More importantly, it changed the way I saw last time it snowed that hard. My father called before the storm even began. "Do you need anything?" he asked. That question would have meant nothing to anyone else. To me, it meant everything. Because once upon a time, he drove away without asking it. I told him I was fine. And I was. My apartment was stocked. My calendar was full. My life was steady in a way I used to pray for. But something unexpected had happened over the years. They didn't just lose power. They lost control over the narrative. For most of my life, I was the difficult child. The sensitive one. The dramatic one who overreacted. After the audit. After the demotion. After the company tightened its ethics policies under Eleanor's quiet oversight, people started seeing patterns. Colleagues who once feared my father began speaking more openly. Staff who felt ignored now had reporting channels that actually worked. The culture shifted, not loudly, systematically. My father wasn't humiliated, he was held accountable. There's a difference. At family gatherings now, the tone is different. My opinions aren't brushed aside. When I speak, people listen. Not because I demand it, but because I proved something without shouting. A few months ago, something happened that sealed everything. A junior employee in one of the branches filed a complaint against a manager for mistreatment. Years ago, that complaint might have disappeared. This time, it didn't. It was investigated properly. Policies were followed. Consequences were issued, and the person overseeing that compliance review. Me. When I signed off on the final documentation, I paused for a moment. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about the version of me standing in that snow, realizing no one was coming back. Back then, I felt powerless. Now I was in a position where no one else had to feel that way under our watch. That's the part no one talks about. Real revenge isn't loud. It's structural. It's building systems that don't allow the kind of carelessness that hurt you. My brother eventually asked me for career advice. The irony almost made me smile. He sat across from me one afternoon, nervous, asking how to rebuild professionally without relying on family connections. I didn't mock him. I didn't remind him of that night. I gave him real advice. Certifications to pursue. Skills to develop. Contacts he could approach, not because of our last name, but because of merit. He left that meeting quieter than usual. A year later, he landed a role on his own. He sent me a message that simply said, "Thank you." No ego, no sarcasm, just gratitude. And my father. He's different now. Not perfect, but aware. Last winter, he volunteered at one of our foundation's distribution events. No announcement, no spotlight. He carried boxes in the freezing cold for hours. At one point, our eyes met across the parking lot. Snow was falling again. But this time, no one was being left behind. After the event, as we packed up, he walked over and handed me a pair of thermal gloves. "For next time," he said. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a movie moment. But it was acknowledgement. And here's the truth I didn't understand back then. They thought abandoning me would teach me a lesson. It did. Just not the one they expected. It taught me I could survive without their approval. It taught me that character shows up when comfort disappears. It taught me that the most powerful move isn't screaming when you're hurt. It's remembering. It's rebuilding. It's rising quietly until the same people who dismissed you have to adjust to your new height. The woman I helped made one call. But that call only opened a door. I walked through it. They left me in the snow believing I would shrink. Instead, I became someone they now call when the forecast turns cold. And the most satisfying part. I don't feel the chill. One detail I never told anyone. The night they left me on that road, when the car lights disappeared, I didn't just feel cold. I felt erased. Like my absence would make their lives easier. That's what hurt the most. Not the snow. Not the danger. But the quiet certainty in their voices, as if removing me from the car solved everything. For years, I carried that feeling. Even after the foundation launched. Even after promotions. Even after applause. Success doesn't automatically delete old wounds. It just gives you space to see them clearly. One evening, long after everything had changed, I found myself driving that same mountain road again. Not by accident. On purpose. It was winter. Snow lining the edges. But the sky was clear. I parked roughly where I remembered standing that night. Turned off the engine. Stepped out. The air was cold, but not cruel. Controlled. Predictable. I stood there for a few minutes, hands in my coat pockets, just breathing. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was grateful. Because if they hadn't driven away, I might have stayed. Stayed in the role they assigned me. Stayed in the cycle of defending myself. Stayed small enough to be tolerated. That night forced me to stop expecting rescue from people who weren't willing to give it. It forced me to rely on myself, and strangely, it forced them to confront themselves too. A few months after that drive, something unexpected happened. My father asked if he could share the real story with extended family. Not to shame himself, not to defend himself, but to correct it. For years, the version floating around was that I stormed off. He wanted to set it straight. At the next gathering, he did. No dramatics. No excuses. He told them he had asked me to get out of the car during a storm, that he misjudged the situation, that he failed as a parent in that moment. The room was silent. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt released, because the lie had been heavier than the snow. Afterward, a few relatives approached me differently, not with pity, with respect. And something inside me finally settled. Revenge, in the beginning, felt like watching consequences unfold. But now I understand it differently. The real payoff wasn't their demotions. It wasn't their apologies. It wasn't even my success. It was the shift in identity. I am no longer the person waiting in the cold, hoping someone will come back. I am the person who builds warmth, for myself and for others. Eleanor retired last year. At her farewell dinner, she hugged me and whispered, "You were the best decision I ever made." I almost corrected her. Because she didn't make me. She just recognized me. And recognition, at the right moment, can change everything. When I look at my life now, the team I lead, the programs we run, the people we help, I see something my family never saw in me back then. Steadiness, strength, restraint. They thought power meant control. I learned power is composure. They thought abandoning me would end the conflict. It ended the illusion. Because the moment their car disappeared into that storm, I stopped trying to earn a place in it. And when the woman I helped made one call, she didn't hand me revenge. She handed me opportunity. What I did with it, that's the part that matters. They left me in the snow believing I would freeze. Instead, I became the one who decides where the warmth goes. And that will always be colder than any storm. They drove away, something almost poetic about how life circles back. Last winter, a young volunteer joined our foundation. Quiet kid, kept to himself, worked harder than anyone else. One night after a distribution drive, I noticed him lingering by the supply truck while everyone else laughed inside with hot coffee. I walked over and asked if he was okay. He hesitated. Then he told me his family had kicked him out months ago after an argument. Not during a snowstorm. Not as dramatic. Just told him to leave. He said it casually, like it didn't matter. But I recognized that tone. That, "I'll pretend I'm fine" voice. I didn't give him a speech. I didn't tell him my story. I just said, "You don't have to prove your worth to people who already decided not to see it." He stared at me for a second like I'd read something off his chest. That night, I made sure he got extra shifts, connected him with housing resources. Quiet support, no spotlight. Driving home, snow dusting the windshield, I realized something that made me smile. The cycle had fully reversed. I wasn't the one stranded anymore. I was the one stopping the car. My family abandoned me in the snow thinking I would disappear into it. Instead, I learned how to navigate storms. And now, when someone else is left out in the cold, I don't drive away.